Hi everyone, my name is Tolets. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is all about trying to help you practice and improve your English language skills. In today's video, I'm going to talk about conditional, which is one of those really expressive aspects of English, but unfortunately can also be very confusing for many English language learners. Knowing how to formulate conditional sentences is important because we use it quite often, both in speaking and writing. So please stick around and enhance your learning of conditionals by watching this video. I'm going to briefly discuss the forms and usage of the four types of conditionals: zero, first, second, and third conditionals. When we say conditional in English, we are referring to a complex sentence, consists of two parts, a dependent or subordinate clause, which begins with the adverbial subordinator if, that's why it's called if clause, and a main or independent clause. Take note that the if clause can be placed at the front or at the end, so you can switch these clauses. It doesn't matter which part you put first, the sentence has the same meaning. In either order, the if clause sets up the condition and the main clause gives the result or outcome. The result or outcome is dependent on the if clause. The result or outcome only happens if the if clause occurs or happens. Take note that if the if clause is placed at the end, we don't place comma between these clauses. Now I'm going to discuss each type of conditionals so that you'll know the differences among them in terms of forms and usage. The first type is the zero conditional, which is called factual conditional because it's used for talking about scientific fact, general truth, habit, instruction, and rule. Zero conditional is very common in scientific writing since the sciences are often concerned with absolute relationships. We can't argue with scientific fact. Look at this example. If you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. This is a scientific fact. You have been doing this many times and you know that water always boils when you heat it to 100 degrees. Both the if clause and the main clause use the present tense verbs. Heat and boils are present tense verbs. Zero conditional is the easiest to remember because both clauses use present tense verbs. Let's have this next example. Wood does not burn if there is no air. This is another scientific fact. Wood needs air in order to burn. No air, no fire. Notice the verbs in the if clause and the main clause. They're both present tense verbs. Does burn and is are present tense verbs. Zero conditional is also used to talk about habit or thing that we always do in certain situation or condition. If I get sick, I go to the doctor. This becomes a habit because this is what I do every time I get sick. Again, notice the verbs in the if clause. And the main clause, get and go are both present tense verbs. Take note that for both scientific fact and habit, we can actually replace if with when or whenever, and still expresses more or less the same idea. We can say, when I get sick, I go to the doctor. Whenever I get sick, I go to the doctor. The subordinators if and when or whenever can be used interchangeably in zero conditional sentence. This happens because the outcome will always be the same, so it doesn't matter if or when it happens. Take note that when or whenever can only be used in zero conditional, particularly for factual and habitual conditionals. One more thing to remember is that zero conditional is also used to give instruction using the imperative or command in the main clause. If Anna calls, tell her to meet me at the cafeteria. The if clause used present tense verbs calls, and main clause used imperative verb tell. Imperative verb is a base verb. A base verb does not have a suffix such as s, es, or ing. Now we have the first conditional, which is also called future conditional because it's used to talk about things that are possible or likely to happen now or in the future if we do something. In other words, first conditional is used to talk about possible or likely future outcomes. If I study hard, I will pass the exam. We all know that hard work pays off, so passing an exam is the likely result of studying hard. Notice the verb study used in the if clause. It's a present tense verb, while the main clause used the future tense verb phrase will pass. Take note of this combination of verbs. In the first conditional sentence, present tense verb study is placed in the if clause, and future tense verb phrase will pass is placed in the main clause. Let's say it's morning and I'm at home. I plan to play tennis this afternoon, but there are clouds in the sky. I say, if it rains, I will stay at home. The normal pattern for this type of conditional is that if clause uses a present tense verb and the main clause uses the modal will or be going to indicate possible or likely future outcomes. If it rains, I will stay at home. We can also say, if it rains, I'm going to stay at home. It's all in the verbs. The pairing of verbs, present tense verb in the if clause and future tense verb in the main clause, is what makes this line first conditional sentence. Use will and be going to if you believe there will be a certain or strong result or outcome. The problem here is that the future outcome expressed in the main clause is not enough to warrant the use of will and be going to. There are cases in which the future outcome or result is not certain, or we want to reduce the certainty of the action in the main or result clause. In that case, we'll use a weaker modal of prediction such as might, may, and should. We can say, if it rains, I might stay at home. If it rains, I may stay at home. Or if it rains, I should stay at home. Use will in be going to for certain or strong result, should for probable result, may and might for possible result. May is stronger than might. Take note that modals will, be going to, should, may, and might are placed in the main clause, not in the if clause. When can we use will in the if clause? Only when you want to indicate the need or request for agreement. For example, if you want to tell someone that if he agrees to keep quiet, you will give him a cup of ice cream. You can say, if you will keep quiet, I will give you a cup of ice cream. Remember that this is the only condition in which the modal will can be placed in the if clause, if there's a need or request for agreement. Look at this first conditional sentence. If we do not stop using CFCs, the ozone layer will get thinner. The if clause is negative. It has the adverb not. The adverbial subordinator unless is equivalent to the negative if clause. We can say, unless we stop using CFCs, the ozone layer will get thinner. Make sure that when you use the adverbial subordinator unless, you don't have the adverb not in your if clause, because those two mean the same in the first conditional. Now we have the second conditional, which is also called imaginative conditional. In second conditional, we are imagining a present situation that is impossible or unlikely to happen. We're imagining that the present situation is different. That's the reason this type is also called present unreal conditional. Second conditional has two subtypes, hypothetical conditional and counterfactual conditional. Look at this example of present hypothetical conditional. If I had time, I would visit my friend in Vigan. At the moment, I'm very busy, but I can imagine what I would do if I had time. Notice that the if clause is not strongly negated. There's still a chance that I have or will have the time. Notice the verbs used. The if clause used past tense verb had, and the main clause used the verb phrase would plus base form of verb, would visit. Counterfactual conditional, on the other hand, expresses impossible event in the if clause. If my grandfather were alive, he would not like our world today. Look, the if clause is very strongly negated. My grandfather is not alive today, nor will he be alive in the future. Notice the verbs used. The if clause used the plural linking verb were, even if the subject grandfather is singular. We say, if I were, if she were, if he were, if it were, if they were, and if we were. The main clause used the verb phrase would plus base form of verb would like. This is another example of second conditional sentence from Beyonce's song If I Were a Boy. Here the if clause is very strongly negated. Beyonce speaks about a counterfactual situation. Beyonce isn't a boy, but she can imagine what she would do and how she would be if she were a boy. The plural linking verb were is used in the if clause even if the subject pronoun I is singular. The main clause used the verb phrase would plus the phrasal verb, would rule out. Lastly, we have the third conditional, which is also called imaginative conditional. But unlike second conditional, third conditional is used to talk about something in the past which can't be changed or it's too late to change. That's the reason it's called past unreal conditional. The third conditional is also like a dream, but with no possibility of the dream coming true. Let's say I didn't study in the past, so I failed in an exam. It's something I cannot change now. I say, if I had studied well, I would have passed the exam. The if clause, if I had studied well, didn't actually happen. I'm imagining a result if the past was different. Did I really study the lessons well? No, I'm talking about what could have happened in the past, something that didn't really happen. Third conditional is also an excellent form to use when you want to express regret or disappointment over something that has happened, especially a loss or a missed opportunity. Look at the verbs used. The if clause used the past perfect tense verb had studied. A past perfect tense verb is a verb phrase consists of had and past participle verb. Examples are had studied, had written, and had eaten. Of course, we also have past perfect progressive like had been studying, had been writing, and had been eating. The main clause used the verb phrase would plus have plus past participle, would have passed. You can also use may, might, and could depending on the meaning that you want to express. May have passed the exam, might have passed the exam, or could have passed the exam. When I was growing up, my parents would insist that I should take nursing in college, but I didn't follow my parents' wishes. I say, I would have become a nurse if I had followed my parents' wishes. Notice the verbs used. The if clause used the past perfect tense verb had followed, and the main clause used the verb phrase would have become. Let's say there was a party at school. Because I didn't know that there was a party, I went to school without wearing special clothes. I say, if I had known, I would have worn something nicer. The if clause used the past perfect tense verb had known, and the main clause used the verb phrase would have worn. Now you know everything about 0, first, second, and third conditionals. This time let me give you a quiz. Let's begin. How's the quiz? Was it easy or difficult? It's okay if you missed some items. You can always go back to this video until you master the 4 types of conditionals. Thank you very much for watching and learning with me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now so you can help me grow my channel. Bye!